Clara Dao's story is one of grit, heart, and a whole lot of drama. From a quiet kid in Toronto to a social media star with millions of followers, she turned her insecurities into a megaphone for body positivity, until the internet turned on her. In this three-part tale, we'll dive into her rise, the messy backlash that rocked her world, and where she stands today. It's a wild ride of self-love, accusations, and resilience. Want the full scoop? Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel for more stories like Clara's, delivered straight to your feed every week. Clara Dao was born on September 12, 1998, in the bustling city of Toronto, Canada, a place known for its vibrant mix of cultures and chilly winters. Growing up in a household where her parents worked hard to make ends meet, she was a quiet kid who spent a lot of time doodling in notebooks or scrolling through early internet forums. She didn't stand out much back then, just another face in the crowd at her high school, where she zipped through classes with decent grades but no real spotlight. That changed when she stumbled into the world of social media, a place where she'd eventually carve out a name for herself. It started small, just a few selfies on Instagram, but by the time she hit her early 20s, Clara had found her groove on TikTok and YouTube, platforms that would launch her into a whole new stratosphere. What made Clara famous wasn't some wild stunt or a viral dance move. It was her voice, soft but steady, talking about something a lot of people quietly wrestled with, feeling good about their bodies.
I'm a naturally skinny person. I have never gained weight since my adult life.
She zeroed in on a corner of the body positivity movement that didn't get much airtime, being skinny, flat-chested, or just not curvy in a world obsessed with hourglass figures. She'd stand in front of her phone camera, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing a simple tank top, and talk about how she used to hate her reflection. Back in the day, she'd avoid beaches because she thought her slim frame looked wrong in a bikini. Now, she was flipping that story upside down, telling her followers they didn't need to fit some mold to feel beautiful. Her TikTok videos, short and punchy, racked up millions of views. Clips of her trying on outfits, laughing at old insecurities, or just chatting about life over a cup of coffee. She had a knack for making it feel like she was talking straight to you, like a friend who got it. YouTube was where Clara stretched her legs a bit more. Her channel became a cozy corner of the internet, filled with longer videos where she'd dive deeper. One day, she'd post a 10-minute ramble about growing up feeling invisible next to her more outgoing friends. The next, she'd share a "Get Ready With Me" clip, slipping into a sundress and explaining why she stopped caring about padding her bra. Her subscribers ate it up, leaving comments about how they'd never seen someone like them. Small-framed, no dramatic curves, celebrated online before. By 2025, she'd built a following that could fill a small stadium, 2.3 million on TikTok and 1.9 million on YouTube. Brands started knocking too. She partnered with clothing companies pushing size-inclusive lines, modeling jeans that actually fit her narrow hips, or tees that didn't drown her slight build. It wasn't just about the numbers, though. Clara had tapped into something raw and real, a hunger for representation that wasn't loud or flashy but hit home for a lot of people. Her content wasn't all serious either. She had a goofy side that kept things light. She'd stitch TikTok trends with her own twist, like lip-syncing to a sassy pop song while holding up a tiny pair of shorts she once cried over not filling out. Or she'd film herself baking cookies in her cramped Toronto apartment, flour dusting her nose, joking about how she'd rather eat dessert than stress about her waistline. That mix of honesty and humor hooked her audience. Clara wasn't preachy. She was relatable. A girl who'd figured out how to like herself and wanted you to get there too. She'd talk about her teenage years, when she'd skip meals hoping it'd magically change her body, only to realize later that starving didn't fix anything. It just made her tired. Now she'd whip up a smoothie on camera, grinning as she tossed in extra berries, telling viewers to eat what makes them happy. It was simple stuff, but it stuck. Clara's rise wasn't all smooth sailing, though. She'd opened up about where it all started, a brutal breakup in her early 20s that left her reeling. Her ex, some guy she never named, had dumped her cold, and she'd spent months picking up the pieces. Social media became her outlet, a way to scream into the void without screaming at all. She'd posted her first real TikTok on a whim, her, red-eyed but smiling, saying she was done letting someone else decide her worth. It blew up overnight, and suddenly she wasn't just healing, she was leading. That vulnerability became her signature. She'd weave it into her videos, like when she'd sit cross-legged on her bed, recounting how she used to scroll through Instagram, jealous of girls with fuller figures, until she decided to stop comparing. Her fans adored that realness, flooding her comments with heart emojis and stories of their own. Her hometown shaped her too. Toronto's mix of gritty streets and shiny skyscrapers gave her a grounded edge. She'd film herself walking through Kensington Market, grabbing a coffee from a hole-in-the-wall spot, or dodging snowflakes on her way to the subway. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. She'd joke about Canadian winters, bundling up in oversized coats that made her look even tinier, or tease her followers about how she'd rather stay inside with a blanket than brave the cold. That slice of life kept her connected to her roots, even as her follower count soared. Clara wasn't chasing Hollywood. She was building something from her little corner of the world, and it worked. What really set Clara apart was how she flipped the script on body positivity. It wasn't about preaching to the choir or chasing trends. She zeroed in on girls like her, ones who'd been told they were too skinny or not womanly enough, and gave them a megaphone. She'd post side-by-side photos, one from her insecure days, head down and arms crossed, next to a recent shot, all smiles in a crop top. The message was clear: you don't have to change to shine. Her TikTok dances weren't polished. She'd stumble and laugh, proving you didn't need rhythm to have fun. On YouTube, she'd host Q&As, answering fans who asked how to deal with rude comments about their size, always with a shrug and a "they don't get to live in your skin." It was practical, no-nonsense advice that hit harder than any motivational poster. Clara Dao's fame came from that quiet rebellion. She didn't need fireworks or a big budget, just a phone, a story, and a willingness to show up as herself. By 2025, she'd turned her personal mess into a movement, one video at a time, proving that even the smallest voices could echo loud if they spoke the truth. Toronto's skinny girl with a big heart had made her mark, and millions were listening. Clara Dao's rise to fame had been a steady climb, built on authenticity and a knack for connecting with people who felt overlooked. But by early 2025, the air around her started to shift. Whispers turned into shouts, and the cozy corner of the internet she'd carved out began to feel more like a battleground. Drama, messy and loud, crashed into her world, threatening to undo the goodwill she'd spent years stacking up. It wasn't one big blowout that sparked it. It was a slow drip of accusations, rumors, and screenshots that piled up until they couldn't be ignored. For a girl who'd made her name preaching self-love, the irony wasn't lost on anyone when the backlash started painting her as a fraud. The trouble kicked off in late February 2025, right around when the snow was still thick on Toronto's streets. It started with a few stray comments on her TikTok videos, sharp little jabs from random accounts calling her out for things she'd said in passing. One user, buried in the replies of a clip where Clara twirled in a tight dress, typed something like, "Funny how she's all about body positivity but pushes starvation vibes." It didn't get much traction at first, just another troll in the sea of faceless usernames. But then it snowballed. Screenshots from her old Instagram stories, ones she'd posted years back and long since deleted, started floating around on X. They showed her joking about skipping meals to "stay tiny," a quip she'd made as a teenager before her whole self-love journey kicked in. To her fans, it might have been ancient history, but to her critics, it was a smoking gun. Soon, X was buzzing with threads dissecting her every move. People dug up clips from her YouTube Q&As, zeroing in on moments where she'd laughed off questions about her diet or deflected with a vague, "I just eat what I want." One user with a decent following posted a blurry photo of Clara at a Toronto cafe, picking at a salad while her friend chowed down on fries. The caption read, "Body positivity queen, but only if you're skinny like her." It wasn't proof of anything, really, just a grainy snapshot, but it lit a match. Commentators on YouTube jumped in, those slop channels that thrive on tearing people down. They stitched together montages of her talking about loving her slim frame, then cut to old vlogs where she'd mused about wishing she could gain weight, but just couldn't. The narrative was taking shape. Clara Dao, the girl who built her brand on uplifting the underrepresented, was secretly a hypocrite who thrived on staying small. The drama didn't stay quiet for long. By the end of February, it was a full-on storm. Fans started picking sides, flooding her comment sections with either fierce defenses or biting betrayal. One TikTok she posted, a simple one, just her sipping tea and talking about a rough day, got ratioed hard, with thousands of replies calling her fake. Someone dug up an interview from 2022 where she'd admitted to struggling with food in her teens, spinning it into a gotcha moment. If she'd been so messed up about eating back then, how could she claim to be healed now? Critics on X ran with it, saying she was peddling a polished lie to vulnerable girls who'd never look like her unless they starved themselves, too. It was ugly, and it spread fast, like spilled ink soaking through a page. Clara didn't stay silent. She hopped on YouTube with a response video, her first real stab at addressing the chaos. She sat there, no makeup, hair a little wild, looking straight into the lens. Her voice cracked as she explained those old screenshots were from a dark time, before she'd figured herself out. She swore she'd never pushed anyone to be unhealthy, that her whole deal was about feeling good, not fitting some size. She even showed a takeout bag from her favorite burger joint, half laughing as she said she'd eaten fries that morning. To her diehards, it was enough. They rallied with heart emojis and "We believe you" messages. But the skeptics weren't buying it. They called it damage control, a scripted sob story from a girl who'd been caught. X lit up again, with posts claiming she was only sorry because the mask had slipped. Then came the bigger twist. Someone leaked a DM, supposedly from Clara to a fan, where she'd allegedly told the girl to just eat less if she wanted to feel confident in tight clothes. The screenshot was blurry, the account unverified, but it didn't matter. People ran with it. On TikTok, creators stitched it into their own videos, shaking their heads at how she could say that while preaching acceptance. Clara fired back on her Instagram story, calling the DM fake and begging people to stop twisting her words. She said she'd never DM'd anyone advice like that it was a setup. Her team even got involved, posting a statement on her behalf, saying they were looking into who'd faked it and why. But the damage was done. The internet doesn't wait for proof. It picks a villain and swings. The pylon got nastier. X-users started dragging her appearance into it, mocking her thin arms or flat chest, the very thing she'd spent years defending. One viral post read, "Clara Dao built a career on being skinny and sad. Now she's just mad we noticed." Commentary channels churned out hour-long exposés, splicing her sunny TikToks with ominous music, painting her as a calculated manipulator. A few even tied it to her breakup years back, speculating her ex had dumped her for being too controlling about her body, though there was zero evidence for that. It was a feeding frenzy, and Clara was the chum. Her follower count took a hit, not a freefall but a steady bleed as people unfollowed, tired of the noise or convinced she'd sold them a lie. She tried to keep posting through it, sticking to her usual vibe. One TikTok showed her dancing in her kitchen, captioning it, "Still here, still me." But the comments were a war zone, half cheering, half jeering. Her YouTube views dipped and brands got quiet, no new sponsorships popping up. The drama wasn't just about what she'd said or done, it was about what people wanted her to be. She'd been their underdog, their proof that skinny girls could win too. Now, some saw her as a symbol of everything wrong with influencer culture, Pretty words masking a hollow core. Clara kept her head down, but you could tell it was wearing on her. Her latest video had her looking tired, eyes a little puffy, though she still smiled through it. The storm wasn't dying down by March 2nd, 2025. It was a messy tangle of truth, rumors, and rage, with Clara stuck in the middle, fighting to hold on to the platform she'd built. Whether she'd weather it or crack under the weight, no one could say yet. The internet had turned on its darling, and it wasn't letting go easy. By March 2nd, 2025, Clara Dao was still standing, though the ground beneath her felt shakier than ever. The storm of drama that had erupted in February hadn't fully blown over, but it had settled into a tense hum, a background noise she couldn't quite tune out. Her TikTok and YouTube pages were still active, lights on in the house she'd built online, even if the windows were smudged with fingerprints from the chaos. She'd lost some followers, her TikTok count had dipped below 2.2 million, and YouTube hovered just under 1.9 million. But the drop wasn't a cliff dive. It was more like a slow leak, a sign that while some had walked away, plenty were still hanging around, watching to see what she'd do next. Her content hadn't changed much on the surface. She kept posting those short TikTok clips, spinning around in her Toronto apartment, her voice steady as she talked about finding peace in small things, like the way sunlight hit her coffee mug in the morning. On YouTube, she uploaded a video of her walking through a snowy park, bundled in a puffy coat, chatting about how she was leaning on friends to get through the rough patch. The vibe was still her. Soft, earnest, a little goofy when she tripped over a snowbank and laughed it off. But there was a tightness in her smile now, a flicker in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She wasn't addressing the drama head-on anymore, not after that one response video, but it lingered like a shadow, coloring everything she did. Her audience was split down the middle. The loyal ones stuck close, flooding her comments with support, telling her to keep her chin up. They saw her as a fighter, someone who'd been real with them from day one and didn't deserve the pile-on. One fan wrote under a TikTok, "You've helped me love my body. Don't let the haters win." That crew was loud, stitching their own videos to defend her, calling out the faked DMs and old screenshots as cheap shots. But the other side wasn't quiet either. The skeptics kept popping up, leaving snarky remarks like, "Still waiting for the real apology," or "Body positivity, but only for you, huh?" It wasn't a flood anymore, just a steady drip, enough to keep the tension alive. Clara's current status felt like a holding pattern. She was still creating, still showing up, but the shine had dulled. Brands hadn't come back knocking. Not yet, anyway. The clothing lines and smoothie companies that once lined up for her endorsement were playing it safe, waiting to see if her name would clear or sink further. Her views were down too, not tanking but noticeably thinner than the millions she used to pull. A TikTok that might have hit 1 million plays a year ago was now lucky to break half that. On YouTube, her longer videos still drew a crowd, but the watch time was shorter, like people were checking in then clicking out. She was afloat, but the current wasn't pushing her forward like it used to. Looking at her content now, it's hard not to see it through the lens of what's happened. She's still pushing that self-love message, still showing off her slim frame in sundresses or leggings, telling folks it's okay to be themselves. And it still lands for a lot of people. Girls who never saw their skinny bodies celebrated anywhere else still find her voice soothing. When she talks about shrugging off rude comments or eating a burger without guilt, it feels honest, like she's lived it. There's a warmth there, a genuineness that's tough to fake, and it's why her core fans haven't budged. She's not polished or perfect. She spills her tea sometimes, laughs too loud, and that's the hook. It's real enough to matter. But the cracks show too. The accusations, whether true or twisted, have left a mark. Her sunny clips can feel forced now, like she's trying to prove she's fine when maybe she's not. There's a whiff of defensiveness in how she steers clear of diet talk, sidestepping anything that might spark another fire. And the hypocrisy charge lingers. If she's telling skinny girls to love themselves but stumbled through her own messy past with food, does it weaken her stance? To some, it makes her human, a work in progress like them. To others, it's a flaw she can't outrun, a reason to call her whole gig hollow. Her content's heart is still beating, but it's bruised and you can feel her guarding it. Clara Dao, as of now, is a survivor mid-fight. She's not cancelled, not thriving, just holding steady in a weird limbo. Her platform's still a lifeline for some, a place where small-framed girls see themselves reflected without apology. But the trust she built has frayed, and rebuilding it will take more than a few cute videos. She's got the tools, her voice, her story, her grit. But the jury's out on whether she'll climb back to where she was or settle into something smaller, quieter. For now, she's here, posting through the noise, betting on herself one frame at a time. Clara Dao's journey leaves us with plenty to chew on. Fame built on realness, tested by rumors, and still hanging on. She's not down for the count, but she's not soaring either, stuck in a tug-of-war between loyalty and doubt. Her story shows how fast the internet can lift you up and drag you down. What's next for Clara? Only time will tell. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't miss out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more raw, unfiltered tales of influencers, dreamers, and fighters. Click that button, join the crew, and let's keep unpacking these wild stories together.